Come on. Oh, wrong song. Yeah, this is just kind of a Stato intro I downloaded. I think it's cute. I think it's actually called Cute, like a little, ukulele type thing going on. So, why am I doing yet another Encore? Well, I just saw Paul Ryan, and he did a whole big PowerPoint presentation. And I'm watching Fox News because, they're the only people that have any sort of sense. But don't think of me as a Republican, trust me. You're going to see why in a second. So I'm watching this, and I'm like, you know what? This makes a lot of sense. A big thing I've always been an advocate for is taking people out of the high-risk pool and putting them into kind of like a direct subsidy pool through the governments. Redoing Medicaid in certain ways. Just kind of getting a system that kind of fits. Everything fits together and nobody's in some sort of gap. And by taking people out of the high-risk pool, which is what a lot of states do with their car insurance, I had it, I remember in New York City, I remember hearing about this because I got, what is it called, the DWAI. It's like the DWI but misdemeanor. It's like, I was drinking, but I also got assaulted. I was driving to the hospital. It's sticky. Anyway, so they agreed to give me like an ability impaired as opposed to, a full-fledged DUI or DWI, whatever it is in New York. I never got one, so I don't know. So it's something that they do with car insurance in order to make it affordable to everybody else. I know New York State does it. I'm sure a lot of other states do it. Or else there'd be a lot of people who just, they would have an accident and the insurance companies would just either drop them or charge them so much that they could never, ever get insurance again. So, this idea of doing that with health insurance is great. It's like, finally. I mean, I'm sure New York has been doing it with car insurance for 20 years, if not more. It's probably how they got all these like draconian DWI laws passed. Okay, but if they do get caught, we're going to put them on this. They're going to take these courses, and they're going to have to get their insurance through the government. And So it's almost like Obamacare, but for a lot less people, so we can kind of afford to do that. Okay, that works. And not only can we afford to do that, because we're taking them out and directly subsidizing this much smaller pool of people, then you're going to have much cheaper insurance across the country. Bam. Just a very basic and good idea. So I'm happy that that's going to happen. I don't understand the tax credits yet and how that's going to work. I keep hearing the buzz phrase equalized tax treatments for, to equalize it for people who get their jobs through employers, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that kind of makes sense to me, but at the same time, I want to look more into that, and I wonder what's really going on. Trust no one. So, what else did they go over? Now, it's going to be a 3-tiered thing. The first tier, where you repeal Obamacare and then put in this tax system and have the tax credits, that's going to be like your basic, just get it through and repeal all of Obamacare and, immediately replace it with something. With a framework, right? So far, this framework looks a lot better than Obamacare, so I'm a little happy about that. I'm not a Republican, actually. In fact, a bunch of people on Fox News, while I'm watching the coverage, were kind of saying, oh, we shouldn't have this entitlement at all. We're creating an entitlement. Or, this is Obamacare light. It's like, no, I've read some of Obamacare. I know. I tortured myself. No, this is vastly different. And if you think about it, Obamacare was just like the worst Republican plan you can come up with. I think it was the Heritage Foundation or the Cato Institute, like one of them, this was their plan to kind of say, hey, see, we don't need single payer. We got this. And for some reason, Dummy Barry took that and ran with it and just stipulated the fuck out of it so he could expand Medicaid to as many states as he could. So he became a champion for, like, the Medicaid recipients, me being one of them when I was back in New York. And but it created an imploding framework. So I always wanted either single payer or basically what the Republicans, at least like, the Trumpian, Paul Ryan Republicans are talking about now. I think that's a much more fair system. Take people out of the pool, you lower the cost of health insurance, and you subsidize it. You give people these kind of tax-free healthcare savings accounts, and then they can actually shop around. They can actually use their brain and, look at prices. And because they have skin in the game, if they go to some, haughty neighborhood where the doctor sneezes in your direction, it's $300, they're going to go to a cheaper doctor. Simple as that. That's just kind of picking a little bit better, a better bang for your buck, right? And that needs to happen. Competition across state lines could have a lot to do with it, because then you get kind of these national healthcare insurance companies. Eventually, you'll probably get a non-for-profit one. And they're going to be like the big NFP one is going to supply insurance to, lower income people. And, they're going to have to go to that model, at least for lower income people. And eventually, more and more people are going to go into that sort of deal. It's going to probably resemble some sort of HMO, but more effectively run, hopefully. And then you're going to basically have, which is my other big idea, you're going to eventually go into not-for-profit healthcare insurance companies, which means that they could afford to spend a lot more on customer care as opposed to just making profit. It kind of gets rid of part of the profit motive. They have to make enough so they can operate, but they don't have to make enough so that every Tom, Dick, and Harry that works for them can buy a vacation home in Maui or their own island, right? The other thing I think is going to happen is as competition increases, you're going to see doctors. You're going to see a lot of places that didn't have these kind of, not like free clinics, but like, low-end price clinics. You're going to see more of them popping up, and they're going to hire doctors who maybe don't want to work so much, who don't want to run their own business. You have a lot of women doctors, who maybe have kids, and maybe they want to see their kids once every year or so. So, we have all these different types of doctors. They may not necessarily want to run a business, and be like a dermatologist. It's a lot of work, and you don't get paid that much from the insurance companies for dermatology. So it's, they might want to get a salary and have more of a 9 to 5. What does that do? Well, the more doctors you have going into a company as opposed to, running their own company or their own partnership, you're going to get less of, okay, you see 3 patients in 1 hour, right? But your fee schedule says that it's $200 an hour for, you don't even have to do anything yet. And it's a minimum 1 hour. So you can see somebody for like 4 minutes after they waited in the room for 20 minutes. And you go, oh yeah, you don't really get what they're talking about because you're a dickhead doctor and you just want money and you're trying to rifle them through. And you kind of see them for like, 4 or 5 minutes. And you tell your nurse to write out a script. She forges your signature. He's already been seeing somebody else for 2 minutes by the time you get your prescription. And now he's charging $200, but he's charging it to like a bunch of different people at the same time. Why? Because it's his own business and he wants to be rich. All right? He sees this outlay of cash for his workers. So he gets like, oh, I got to pay, Bridget. I got to pay, I got to pay my main secretary. She's so great. I really want to pay her well. But she has to have all this help. So I got to get like, 3 administrators to help her, so you end up with this kind of bloated system, and you're just one doctor. And you have this whole support staff, which is like the minimum support staff, but still, and you're always looking to make money, so you could pay people, so you could pay for your office space, or you could pay for new equipment, so you could, right? This isn't even the scam level, where people are just like, I want a new house in Maui. This is just, you're running your own business and you're trying to balance the books, right? And make a decent profit with it, so you have a decent income. Now, when you have some sort of health management organization, all that administration, you have several people doing it, and you'll probably have more than that. Maybe you have 2 or 3 people working with you. Instead of that, you might have like a dozen of them, but they work for 20 doctors. All right. The thing is more automated. You could afford much better equipment as far as administration. You do all sorts of online things. So it's, you get medical records really quick from the other doctor. And one of the doctors is a dermatologist. The other one is an internist. The other one is a this. The other one is a that. So you have, you could share records, and these people can go and see like everybody in one place. Bam, right? Convenient for them. Convenient for the company. They get, money from each time you visit a doctor. And you got maybe 5 doctors you go to in this building. Bam. Nice, right? But what happens is the doctors don't get as rich as quickly. They're not dealing with the same kind of cash flow. And that's really what upsets them. So they want to have their own practice so that they could be in control of the cash flow. And, at some point they can kind of cash out. That whole mentality of a doctor having a business really drives up everything. Like I said, now instead of, 20 doctors or 30 doctors sharing like a dozen, you have 1 doctor and 3 assistants, 2 administrative, 1's a nurse, whatever. It's the most expensive model you can possibly think of. So, like I said before, then they put on their fee schedule. The minimum is, 1 hour's payment. But if you work for more of like a HMO, you might see 8 people in that. And yes, you get $200 an hour, but you just get $200 an hour. You don't get $200 a person. You see how that kind of minimum 1 hour thing works? It's kind of like your mechanic. You can go in there and do like, flip a switch, or like, replace a wire in like 30 seconds, and he gets a minimum 1 hour of like $42, right? See how that works? How many wires can he replace in that hour? You could have a contest with that shit. You could probably do one every couple of minutes. So we have a very, very inefficient system. And I think that this plan, if the one, you're going to have stage 2, which is the HHS Secretary Price, I think it is. He's going to be putting in all these kind of administrative things that we're going to see, they didn't really go into detail what that would be. They just said, with Obamacare, there was all this stuff that had to be done to make Obamacare work, so we're going to have some of that. The important part is stage 3, when they start doing legislation, like letting companies become national companies. So you kind of have nationalized private healthcare. Then you might have, 5 or 6 companies doing that eventually. And everybody will be trying to become one of those 5 or 6 companies. And because they don't have to worry about working over state lines, all sorts of good stuff can happen. There's a lot of experimental areas that can be created from that. And there's also, let's say you have a doctor who lives in Florida. His expenses are much lower, even though he has like a mansion, but, the housing's cheaper down here. Everything's kind of cheaper down here, or maybe he lives in like Alabama. And then you might have people seeing people kind of online, seeing their doctors, and the guy might be from a different state where things are a lot cheaper and you could pay him less, but he could put his services out there on the internet just to kind of talk to people. And then you have like a backup in-house doctor that he tells them what to do, or like a nurse assistant or a physician's assistant. That's like kind of working under him in all these different places. So he could see a bunch of different people. It would eventually make sense for the companies to go, yeah, let's, their primary, let's, Internet Bob is their primary. And, he's like the gatekeeper. But they also have like a nurse that kind of, that Internet Bob talks to, that kind of checks things out more physically and tells him, somebody in person, but not necessarily, hugely expensive other doctor. There's all sorts of things you could do. One of the things I hope they do is like a medical records transportation act, where everybody has to have a program let's say in PDF, like something that everybody has already, or most people do. So you have your medical records and they're transformed into PDF, maybe on a thumb drive, or maybe you have a card where there's like a cloud database, and you could just kind of, they know your number and they put it in and it pops up your medical records. Damn. All right. Even better, I think, would be like a little thumb drive that you hold on you, maybe have around your wrist, because that way it's your medical records. You don't want them making a mistake. They put like the last 4 digits of your social security number wrong, and suddenly you're a 68-year-old, like senior woman or something, and they're charging her Medicare for your treatment, and somehow you just got a some sort of feminine problem taken care of, and you're a male. Where's her vagina? I see a pee-pee. All right. So, we would have to do things to make sure that doesn't happen. Like ever. So, that could be just biometrics. They just take your thumbprint and they go, oh, okay, now we know exactly who this is. The chances are a few billion to 1 that somebody else is going to have your thumbprint, much less more than 1 finger. So you could do like a couple of fingers. So there are biometric ways to kind of make sure that doesn't happen. So I kind of like where this is going. Now here's why. Now, a lot of us are poor and may need Medicaid like right now. We may need disability right now, right? But not necessarily for the rest of our lives, right? We might need help from the government, maybe just after we get out of college and that whole like on your parents' insurance runs out and you still haven't found a good enough job to get any kind of health care or to afford to even buy it on your own with the subsidies. Let's say, really, bad neighborhood. You just really can't find anything. You can't get out yet. But you can still think, wait, I might be in the middle class one day. And that's actually a study I remember being done. I forget by who, but they said that Americans are the most optimistic to be either middle class or wealthy later on in life, no matter where they come from. So what do you think we as a populace are going to do when the Republicans say, okay, well, this is really going to reduce the burden on the middle class as far as their healthcare costs, when we all want to be at least middle class? We're going to grab it, even if we're not middle class now. If we at any time think we're going to be, we don't want to go into the middle class and then realize, let's say you make $100,000 and $50,000 is gone like that, right? You'd be crying over your Wheaties. You won't be happy. So you're not going to want anything that takes away like half your income right away. All right, you want to be able to buy shit. You make it to the middle class, you want to be able to, buy things for your kids and blah, blah, blah. So it's, a lot of us have that hope that one day we will be. And out of that hope stems, well, then if that's the case, I don't want to go in there and then just be taxed back down into being poor. All right, like why did I work so hard to become poor again? All I did was go up a couple tax treatments and now I have the same amount of take home. That's what it feels like. So we are not as a country going to go, no. We want the heavy taxation, because where's that money going to come from? We know it's going to come from us. And like I said, you're going to work really hard to get into the middle class, and then you're going to be poor again. Kind of no point to it. It takes away that incentive. There are a host of other reasons I'm sure that the right can go into more. I have to admit, more recently, I've been thinking single payer will be a good idea. But I don't know now. I mean, is it something we can afford to do? Is it something our economy is in the shape to do? I don't know. I don't think any of us do. We kind of just have a bumper sticker, from the Republicans or the Democrats, from the right or the left. Scandinavia did it. Why can't we? And that's a good question. That's a reasonable question. But the answer I constantly hear is, well, they got much higher taxes. Maybe that's not such a good thing. Even if you do get certain things for that. We'll see. But I do know one thing. There are definitely some hardcore Republicans who don't want entitlements at all, like any. They don't want to end up paying for anybody's anything. Right? Leave your money out of my pocket. I'm some sort of libertarian anarchist, those types of people. They're usually kind of using libertarianism to just kind of cover up that they're, really, really well paid off by corporations. It seems to me that the Paul Ryans and the Trumps are working against them. In many ways, that PowerPoint presentation wasn't for us. It was for the other Republicans. They want to convince those other Republicans that this is going to be popular enough that they can't stop it. And they might as well vote for it because it's going to get them reelected. That's really what's going on here politically. And honestly, the reason Paul Ryan is so big on it, he's thinking 8 years from now he's going to run. And he's a good-looking guy. He's got a shot. I know that's kind of shallow, but he can actually speak correctly. He can give speeches. He can explain PowerPoints. He was all professorial. He's tall, which is a big thing in leadership. And he also has, if he has this on his side, after Trump's out, we may be seeing Orion. We may be seeing kind of like a long spree of kind of Trumpian Republicans. So Ryan's definitely jumping on board with this, and he's pushing it hard because he knows he has to convince the people, but he also has to convince the really hardcore, like rich people who are, we don't want to pay for any entitlement ever. And the constituents, these people as constituents, are usually kind of they're usually kind of have hired politicians to represent them or lobbyists, right? So it's they have a great deal of power. So it's going to have to be kind of like saving capitalism again, like FDR did. And that may be a good thing. I'm open to that. I'm open to see what happens with that because I'm in a Republican state. So if they can do a good job, because now they have an impetus to, if they can kind of keep the like hardcore Republicans, the anti-entitlement people, from destroying everything, they're going to solidify their hold on the government for a long fucking time. And honestly, they probably deserve to. If they can do a good job with this, after Obamacare failed so miserably, forever the Democrats will be seen as just incompetent. And that's even by the left. There's going to be a huge amount of the people on the left who are going to see it the same way. And you're going to have a lot of Rust Belt Democrats going Republican again. The Reagan Republicans. Ryan is seeing the bigger picture. All right? He knows that you can catch more flies with honey than vinegar. And by helping people and doing it in a fair way that doesn't hurt other people. Like I said, taking those high-risk people out of the pool, directly subsidizing them, you're going to create a hold on the government that we haven't seen since FDR. And it's weird because they're pulling in the same thing. They're just doing it more effectively. I see when he says he's excited, he's not lying because he's seeing the bigger picture and where Republicans are going to go with this, and in 8 years, the possibility of him being president. So, we are going to have this kind of almost like a Trump team of Republicans really pushing their fellow Republicans to do a decent job on this. Not perfect. I mean, ACA was far from perfect, but a decent job. And honestly, some of the things they're suggesting might work, might really, really help. I hope when they get into the legislation phase that a couple more ideas come out. What's going to happen is they're going to be like, we're going to have to do this. Sorry, drug company. I know you give me money, but you're going to have to give us drugs for cheaper. They're going to have to somehow allow not-for-profit insurance companies because eventually one's going to spring up and people are going to start joining it from across the nation. And all these things are coming down the road. And they're being set up to be inevitable, even though the hardcore Republicans don't want it. Some of them see it. Some of them see it, but they really don't want it. And like I said, I was watching this coverage on Fox, and a couple of them, were kind of spitting out the libertarian, like anarchist, free market people type of shit. That wants to get rid of all entitlements. And yeah, they were frustrating to even hear. But those people are going to have to be kind of silenced. And that's what the Trump administration is looking to do. They're trying to push their own Republicans, just like Lyndon Johnson pushed his own Democrats for the Civil Rights Act. You do this, we'll help you with this, and and then he turns around and goes, gotcha! And suddenly the people who started the KKK are back in the Civil Rights Act. It's a wonderful little ditty that we're playing right now. And I think I see the bigger picture too. This isn't just a plan, and this is what I was worried about. Where the hardcore Republicans, just get Obamacare repealed. I think that's what they thought the plan was. Get Obamacare repealed and just don't replace it with really anything except like a couple of like Band-Aids and a couple of confusing statements, and everyone gets fucked. right? Everybody under a certain amount of money just gets screwed. Ryan and Trump are really trying to do something right here because they know that's going to be it. They do a good job after Obamacare, did such a bad job, that's it. You are the government. You're like the Lincoln Republicans. You solidify everything for decades. So I am cautiously optimistic because I know that these other Republicans are going to constantly keep pushing and pushing and pushing, calling it Obamacare light and all that stuff. This is solving a problem in more of a conservative way, but it's solving the problem. These other Republicans don't want to solve the problem. They want to let it lie and just, let people die in the streets, as long as they're free not to pay for their insurance, right? Not to pay for any part of it, not to have anything to do with somebody else's expenses, right? They would get rid of progressive taxation if they could. It's going to be a fight, I think. But the fight is going to be within the Republican Party. The Democrats are just going to lie back and see what happens. The Bernie wing will say its things about single payer and how it might be better. And they're actually, if it does fail, it's going to be the Bernie-crats who are going to be the ones who are hailed as right. But I don't know. I think they're really trying. And a lot of times government works if they're actually trying to do something. But most of the time they're not. They're just trying to get paid or steal money or get money from their donors. So it's we've never really seen, at least in my generation, like the government in action. Because when it really tries to do something, it's usually successful. Yeah, a la Manhattan Project. So, I think we got to give them a chance to make this work. And if anything, I'm going to support the Trumpians against the hardcore Republicans. The hardcore, anarchist Republicans. And maybe, some of us on the left might want to do that, at least to make sure they don't destroy whatever they can create. Maybe we won't agree with everything they create. Maybe it won't be the perfect system. Maybe we'll leave, some people out. But it's going to be a lot better than them repealing Obamacare and then just okay, we're back to the day one before Obamacare. No, that's not going to work. We've created a quasi-entitlement. You don't get free health care, but you get help with it. You get, and your government is responsible for holding back the prices, not through just legislation, but with actual real moves and, effective legislation, let's say. Yes, would I want single payer? Yes. Are we going to get it anytime soon? Probably not. It's just a step too far in social programs. And honestly, we have to look at this kind of leftist liberalism and what it's doing to the other countries. We haven't really taken a look at that yet. We really just go, okay, Scandinavia, which isn't a country, it's a region. But let's say, Norway, Sweden, they have these things, and they're pretty happy, right? Nationalized healthcare is like all over the world. Most of them are happier than us, right? And that's all we look at. We don't look at some of the other variables. Now, I'm not saying there are these horror shows, there are death panels. If you're over 50 and you get sick, they shoot you. I don't really know. I know it's not that, but I don't really know what's going on with that. I'm just saying that a lot of people who talk about how wonderful socialized medicine is, haven't really been in it. So honestly, we need, if we're going to go that route eventually, first I say we try this, but if we're going to go that route eventually, we need to really know our shit. We need to know what works and doesn't, what the effects are, what the effects on the economy are, what the effects on the economic ladder are. Like, if you're really, let's say there's heavier taxes, for example, you want to get into the middle class, and then you get there and like you're poor again because they took so many taxes. I'm repeating myself, but like, are those some of the effects? Can it be done another way? Is this part of the other way? I say we tried this Democrat plan, or the corporate Dems. Let's hope these are kind of the well-meaning, compassionate conservatives. And it's not just some smoke and mirrors trick. I know there's not much trust, but you got to understand that the Republicans are split up. They're just waving a foam finger. They're not necessarily of the same ilk. They're not necessarily beholden to the same people, and they don't necessarily have the same balls. That would be weird if all their balls looked exactly the same. So what happens with that? They're going to fight amongst yourselves, and it's going to be listen, here's the big picture. It's going to be a Republican-controlled government for like 20 years if we do this right. And you're probably still going to have holdouts. But what you might have is some Democrats in Republican areas going, I got to get reelected, and this shit sounds like it's really going to work. And this is actually kind of my plan, or this is similar to the plans I've had before. You might get even somebody like, the Bernie wing, from the Bernie wing, or Bernie himself going, listen, let's work together. I know they're going to have a meeting soon, Bernie and Trump. Let's get together and figure out how we can really do this. And if that happens, all bets are off. The Democrats, as far as corporate Democrats, are gone. The Bernie-crats are going to take their place. It may not even be called the same thing. He may not even use, it might be like United Progressive Party or something. And it'll be like, more of an honest government, as far as you have an honest socialist and an honest Trumpian. And they're, going to compare and contrast and work against each other until they get something they both agree on. And that was always kind of my idea. Like, I remember during the primaries, I always wanted, like, Trump and Bernie in a room. I figured if Trump and Bernie can agree on anything, it's golden. I don't see that happening too much soon, but we'll see. I think a lot of what Trump's doing is really going towards the center. So if he could take the Bernie-crats and pull them towards the center and kind of kick out the establishment, corpo-crats on both wings, you'd have a very powerful coalition that might get some things done. But we'll see. The stock market might go down a little bit, realizing they don't have the, uber Republicans in charge. But I think we'll all be okay with that. I mean, what are they, like 40 times earnings anyway? Fuck them. We would just go down to a more realistic number. Go down to 20 times earnings. All right. Anyway. So I wanted to put that out there because I just saw, Paul Ryan speaking. I haven't seen the White House response yet. I might get back to you after that. And I look forward to your interactions.